Several nights ago, before the book launched, my oldest daughter looked at me. She's 7 years old. She said, "Tomorrow, you and me, we're going on a date." Not a question, a statement. And I want you to feel what that is, because she did not say, "Can we?" She did not say, "I miss you." She said, "Tomorrow, you and me, we're going." Very direct. A 7-year old does not talk like that unless she has been watching the calendar, unless she has measured the distance between what her father said our family rhythm is supposed to be, and what it actually is. And our default is 1 day a week, each daughter, and then Andrea and I. That had not been happening lately. The book launch was 9 days ago. 3 books: Built to Father, When the Framework Fractures, the Built to Father Study Guide. My full time job had not paused for any of it. The long nights and weekends that used to belong to my family had been quietly absorbed by a launch I had been building on what seems like a very long time. And my 7-year old noticed. She did not throw a fit, she did not cry, she just told me what was happening. "Tomorrow, you and me, we're going on a date. That's it." Now, here's the part I want to tell you, because what happened next was bigger than the date she asked for. That Saturday, June 13th, was my first book signing. I'd been planning to take her on a quick date earlier in the week and then leaving her at home for the signing. And instead, she came with me all day. She helped me set up the table, stood next to me through the slow hours and the busy ones. She was patient when there was nothing happening, and present when there were people in front of us. She smiled. She didn't smile. She got hungry. She got hot. And by the end of the day, she had sold 3 books. Or was it 4? Depending on who you ask, she would argue 4, and I would say 3, and we're still settling that one. We came home tired and happy, both of us. Now, I want you to hear me on something before we go anywhere else today. Most men think this episode, Integrity, is about secret sin, the hidden file on the phone, the thing on your receipt your wife is not supposed to see, the double life. And those things matter, and we'll talk about them. But for the working fathers, most of us, the gap is not that dramatic. The gap is a 7-year-old who has measured your words against your calendar, and the closing of that gap can be something as ordinary as letting her spend a Saturday next to you at a book table. This is episode 8, H2, Heart of Integrity, the man who is the same in the dark as he is in the light. Welcome to the Father Blueprint. I'm Doug Androsky, founder of Fathering the Fatherless and author of Built to Father. This is the show for men who are done fathering by accident and ready to father on purpose. And we're back. But before we go anywhere, let me name where we were, or where we're at. The book launched 9 days ago. 2 podcasts dropped the same week. A mayor read a proclamation in a chamber a week ago. I walked you through all the episodes in 7A and 7B. Saturday, June 20th, 4 days from now, is the inaugural Fathering the Fatherless Day in Murray County. And I'll be back on this feed Saturday morning with a short special episode marking that day. But today is Tuesday, and on Tuesdays, we walk the framework. The launch is behind us. The work continues. Pillar H2, Heart of Integrity. And here's what this pillar is actually about. And it's one word: trust. Trust. Not respect, not reputation, not performance. Trust. Trust is the currency of every relationship in your home. It's built in the thousand small moments when nobody is watching, and it's spent in an instant when the gap between what you say and what you do gets exposed. Reputation is what people think of you when they are watching, and character is what you are when they are not. And trust is what accumulates or erodes in the space between those two things over time. Matthew chapter 5, verse 37, the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says something so simple it sounds obvious, but it cuts to the root of the deepest integrity problem most men have. Let what you say be simply yes or no. Let what you say be simply yes or no. A man whose yes is always yes and whose no is always no is a man whose word has weight. His children know that when he says he'll be there, he'll be there. His wife knows that when he commits or makes a commitment, the commitment will be kept. And that kind of man is rare. That kind of man is trusted. But the inverse is just as true. A man whose yes sometimes means no, whose commitments are conditional on his mood, whose word shifts with circumstances, that man trains everyone around him to discount what he says. And I want to pause here for a second, because this is also what our culture is saying. At the book signing on Saturday, someone told me about a young man, mid 20s. He got a vasectomy. Not for medical reasons, because of what his father has been, or hasn't been. And he is not alone. There is a whole generation quietly deciding not to have children, because the only fatherhood they ever saw is the one they refuse to repeat. Men are choosing to end their line rather than risk becoming their father. And let that sit with you for a moment. You probably know someone in that fight, a brother, a son, a friend who swore he would never do it because he is scared he will do it like he did or like his dad did. Get the book in his hands. Show him the cycle has another ending. Or get the book in her hands and show her the same thing. Because the cycle ends with you. That young man with the vasectomy did not lose trust in his father because his father said something offensive once. He lost trust because his father's words and his father's actions did not match for long enough that the young man stopped believing fatherhood itself was something to trust. Not because they disrespect him, because experience has taught them that his words and his actions do not reliably match. And in a home, in the particular ecosystem of a marriage and a family, that gap is devastating. Because your children are watching the match rate. They are calculating, without doing the math consciously, how often what you say and what you do line up. And they are building their theology of trustworthiness, their sense of whether the world is a place where words mean something, from the data you are generating every single day. And I want to come back to my 7-year-old, because the moment she named that night is the moment most men miss. That is not a secret sin moment. And I don't have a hidden file on my phone. I'm not living a double life. The man your daughter knows is the man I am. The gap she named, she did name it in her 7-year-old way, was still a real gap. The gap between what I said our rhythm would be and what our rhythm had been for the previous several weeks. That's the integrity issue, not a moral failure, a commitment failure. And here's why it matters more than men think. A 7-year-old who has to remind her father to keep his word is learning something, not consciously, but she is learning it. She is learning that when dad says we have a weekly date, that means something. She is learning that the season can override the commitment. She is learning that her place in his calendar is conditional on his bandwidth. She doesn't know she's learning yet. She just knows she had to ask. And the asking, the fact that she felt she had to advocate for her time with her father had already promised her, that's data. That's the curriculum. And here's what I'm sitting with this week. When my daughter is 25 years old and she is choosing how much to ask for in her own marriage, the template she will use is what she watched her father do. If she had to ask for time, she will marry a man and assume she has to ask. If she watched her father keep the small commitments without being reminded, she will hold out for a man who does the same. Now I'm not writing her future, but I am writing her instincts. Now what actually happened that Saturday was something I did not plan and could not have engineered. She did not just get on a date with me, and she didn't just ask for it. She got the entire day. And the day she chose to spend with me was not a trip to the park, not ice cream, not a movie. It was a book signing, standing at a table watching people walk past, counting books with her dad, 7 years old. And she chose the work over the entertainment. That tells me something about who she is becoming. And it tells me something about what happens when you keep the yes, even imperfectly, even late, even in a way that looks different than what was originally promised. The yes you keep becomes the soil where trust grows back. Let me say that again. The yes you keep becomes the soil where trust grows back. And I want to tell you something I've been learning because it might describe you too. When I wrote the book a very long time ago, I named something about myself. In the chapter on spiritual leader, I quoted the elder qualifications from 1 Timothy, and I stopped at one of them and I confessed it. Not quick tempered. Not quick tempered. I wrote that this I wrote that this one was personal for me. Not in a small dramatic way, not abuse, not violence, but the pattern of a man whose emotional temperature controls the atmosphere of the household. The kind of pattern that teaches a child to read her father's mood before she learns to trust his character. I named it because it was true. And here's what I've to tell you now. I've grown. I've grown. Not because I'm saying it, because Andrea has noticed as well. Because that anger is less frequent now than it was when I wrote that chapter. Because I've been intentional about the pillars I've been teaching, praying, paying attention, asking the Holy Spirit to set the temperature of my home instead of letting it set by the worst moments. That growth is real, and I'm not pretending humility I do not have. But here's the part I have been sitting with. The sharpness goes away, or goes somewhere. If a man trains himself out of being short with his wife, and the underlying tiredness is still there, the underlying pressure is still there, the underlying weight is still there, where does it go? Maybe it goes to his kids. Maybe it goes to the guy at work who isn't carrying his weight. Maybe it goes to the driver in front of him on the way home. Maybe it leaks out as cold silence instead of hot words. But it goes somewhere. Because the issue underneath sharpness is not the room you are in. The issue is the man inside. This is one of the most important things I've learned about integrity. It does not stay where you put it. If you patch the leak in one room without addressing the pressure in the system, the leak just moves. Different wall, same matter. A man who has stopped raising his voice at his wife but still raises it at his employees has not become a man of integrity. He has become a man of better targeted selection. The work of integrity is not the work of controlling which room your worst self shows up in. It is the work of becoming a man whose worst self has been progressively surrendered to Christ, so that the same patient, kind, slow to anger man shows up everywhere. In the kitchen, in the conference room, in the church parking lot, at the dinner table when nobody is in a good mood. Same man, same temperature, same temperate disposition. And the pillars are not isolated. Now, here's the harder thing I've been learning. And I have to pause on this because it changes how you read the whole framework. The shepherd pillars are not isolated. If one pillar is fracturing, it likely means another one is fracturing too, or is about to. Because a man does not actually have 8 separate problems. He has one heart. And that heart manifests itself in the 8 different rooms. And here's a question I've been sitting with that has nothing to do with the secret sin and everything to do with how this framework actually works in real life. If I loved Andrea inside my home the way I love her outside of my home, would she still need to address things in me? Read that with me again. If I loved Andrea inside my home the way I love her outside of my home, would she still need to address things in me? I say it again. If I love my wife inside my home the way I love her outside, at church, at gatherings, in public, around other people, would she still need to bring things up that need addressing? Or would she sense in the rhythm of our actual life that the man she gets in front of other people is the same man she gets when nobody is around? Because here's the truth. I'm attentive to her in public, I am tender with her in public. I open the door. I include her in the conversation. I am proud to be her husband when people are looking. The question is whether that man is the same man at 3 in the afternoon on a Wednesday when the kids are loud and I'm tired. And that's the integrity question. Not, is there a sin I'm hiding? Is there a version of me I'm saving for her? The worst version, because I have learned the word or the world rewards the better one. Because if there is, that is not just a heart of integrity problem. That is a husband who loves sacrificial problem. And it is also a spiritual leader problem. And it is also an example who inspires potential problem. Because my daughters are watching the home version, not the church version. One heart, many rooms. And this is why I tell you, when you start working on one pillar and you start to see fractures, do not panic. Do not assume you are a fraud. Pay attention. The pillar that surfaces the crack is rarely the pillar where the crack started. Let me say that again. The pillar that surfaces the crack is rarely the pillar where the crack started. The crack started in your heart. The pillars are just the rooms where the same crack shows up wearing different clothes. Now, I want to talk about something Andrea and I have learned the hard way. And I want to honor my wife on this microphone because she has helped me grow in this more than she knows. My daughters are in the room. Always. They are 7, 5, and 3. There is no such thing as a private conversation between Andrea and I. There is no offline. There is no version of our marriage they do not see. Most men hear that and think, okay, so should I not fight, or should I not fight with my wife in front of the kids? Well, that's half right. And here's the other half. If the friction happens in front of them, the repair has to happen in front of them too. Because what my daughters need to learn is not that mom and dad never disagree. They need to learn what it looks like when a man owns it. When a man says, babe, I was wrong. The way I just spoke to you was not right, and I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? And they need to hear that out loud with their ears in front of them while they are in the kitchen pretending not to listen. Because the alternative, where the rupture is public and the repair is private, teaches them something I did not want them to learn. It teaches them that men do not apologize, or that apologies happen in shadows, or that when something breaks between two people and you sweep it under the rug and pretend it didn't happen. That is not the marriage I want them to expect. And what I want them to expect is a husband who fails sometimes, who owns it quietly, asks for forgiveness specifically, and changes the pattern in the next week. Repentance in real time, out loud, where they can see it. Because a daughter who has seen her father apologize to her mother will not marry a man who refuses to apologize. She knows what it looks like. She has watched it. She will not settle for nothing less. Here's the question the pillar comes down to, and I want you to sit with it. Who are you when no one important is watching? Who are you when no one important is watching? Not who you intend to be, not who you are on your best days, in your best moments with the people whose opinions shapes your self-image. Who are you in the car alone when someone cuts you off? Who are you in the hotel room when no one would know? Who are you with the person you cannot help or cannot help you? The server, the junior colleague, the subordinate whose complaint could never reach anyone who matters. Who are you at 3 in the afternoon on a Wednesday when the kids are loud and the work is unfinished and your wife asks you something you do not have the bandwidth to answer well? Who are you in the dark? Because that man, not the man you present, not the man you aspire to be, but the man who shows up when the performance is over, that is the man your family is actually living with. That is the man your children are forming their theology of trustworthiness from. That is the man your wife either rests in or quietly carries the weight of. And I want to say this directly to the man who has been managing a gap for years, Maybe yours is not a date that slipped. Maybe yours is something heavier, something you have not told anyone, something you have been carrying so long that the carrying feels like the floor. The length of time does not disqualify you from repair. It doesn't. 20 years of walking in the gap does not mean you have to keep adding to it. The first step is not a dramatic confession. The first step is a private decision between you and God. In whatever room you are in right now, that gap closes here. Closes. That you are done managing the fracture and ready to start healing. That decision, made honestly and held consistently, is where restoration always begins. The shepherd framework is not built for men who have it together. It's not. It is built for men who are willing to. Those are two very different things. If you are willing to, you qualify today, regardless of what is behind you. So one thing this week, just one. Name one promise you have made and not kept. Not the worst one, the one you keep almost keeping. The one that keeps getting bumped to next week. The standing commitment to your wife you've been almost honoring for 3 months. The date night that keeps slipping. The morning prayer time you keep meaning to start. The 15 minutes with your son after dinner that gets eaten by the phone every night. You know what it is. Name it. Then keep it. This week, once. Not perfectly forever, once. Tell me about it. Comment in the podcast. Share it with us. Because integrity is not built by becoming impressive. It is built by closing one small gap, and then another, and then another, until the man your family lives with is the same man your colleagues see, until the version of you in the kitchen is the version of you at the church potluck, until your 7-year-old does not have to ask for a date because you've already put it on the calendar. Let your yes be yes. Let your no be no. Be the same man in the dark that you are in the light. Not because your reputation depends on it, because your family does. Because the children who are watching you, who are building their understanding of what a trustworthy man looks like from the raw material of your daily life, deserve to inherit a father whose private self they never have to be afraid of discovering. Be that man in the dark every day. Last Saturday, I took my 7-year-old to a book signing. She told or sold 3 books of 4, depending on who's counting. We came home tired and happy. That's integrity in our house this week. Yours might look different, but it always looks like a kept word, eventually. This Saturday, June 20th, I'll be back with a special episode marking the inaugural Father and the Fatherless Day in Murray County. Short, out of cycle, the mayor's proclamation in her own voice. I hope you will join me. And then we travel on book tour for the next several weeks. The next podcast, we will discuss E2, the example who inspires potential, the man who calls forth destiny in his children. Your legacy is being written right now. This is your blueprint. You were built for this. Show up, stay, and lead. I'm Doug Androsky. This is the Father Blueprint. Go get yourself a copy of Built to Father Now, available now on Amazon.